There was a pandemic flu that swept the nation. It was the Asian flu back in 1957. And I was just a baby, 6 months old. And what happened was, I guess it was mostly taking out the elderly and the babies at the time. And my mother had went to work. I had, I'll give you the understanding of what I was able to find out after to put the pieces together. But my mother had went to work. My babysitter had actually contracted the Asian flu and was in the hospital. So my mother was concerned about me, but I didn't have a temperature. I was acting fine. So she went ahead and dropped me off at it was a couple's house to babysit me while she went to work. And what happened was, and this now I can tell you is what I experienced as the baby. And it's very unusual to have an infant have a near death and be able to have total recall. And I'll go into that later as to how I have a full understanding and recall the event in its totality. So take you back, a journey in time, back to the 1950s. Do you remember, well, you probably don't, you're too young, but there was a kitchen table and they had the like great big chrome. And I was in a little baby bouncy carrier. And I know that because I could see myself. And I didn't have good vision because I had already contracted rubella. So my vision was already out. So I had a fuzzy view of what I was seeing as a baby, but what I saw will bring into clarity everything else that I was able to subsequently find out from my mother. So I was in a baby carrier. I had two people that were at the other end of the room near a corner, and they were talking to each other, and they were very upset, and they kept looking at me. And remember, I don't understand English. I don't understand words, but there was very staccato. And I knew they were really upset. So I had my eyes glued on them for what I could barely see. They were fuzzy, but I knew they were upset. And I knew there was something brown on the wall. When I think about it, it was an old-fashioned phone, but I didn't know it at the time, right? And it's fuzzy because I didn't have really good vision. And so I knew they were really upset, and they were upset, and they were looking at me. So that's how I know what my body looked like, because I finally understood, because I was trying to say, calm down in my head, like, what's wrong? And I realized they were looking at me. The attention was focused on me. And when I looked down, I saw my little baby hands and realized that it was me that they were concerned about. And I'm thinking, there's nothing wrong. I feel absolutely fine. I feel wonderful. And at that moment, I could see light shimmering from my hands. And the best I can tell you to give you words in the English vocabulary that would describe what happened next would be like light beams filled with little champagne bubbles of love. And they literally scooped down and I was right like this, and it scooped down like a light beam and just scooped me right up out of my body. And in a few seconds, I was lifted up out of the apartment. I could see, now this is what's interesting. I could see my mother. Now I'm up out of my body, but in those 2 seconds, as I'm rising up, I can see her running from the doorway down into the corridor, screaming, where is she? What's her temperature? At this point in time, I understand words. I understand English. I know what everyone's saying. I know what they're doing. And she's saying, pack her in ice. And they're going, it's 105. So it's very interesting that I understood words at that moment. I was lifted into the stratosphere, way above Earth, way out into space. And it was almost a freeing event. I was shackled by constriction. And all of a sudden, my consciousness expanded. It would be like taking a bag off someone's head, and you could see the world and you could feel the world. And it was as far as you could see, the vista was that beautiful. And I almost took a breath of like, oh my God, that's wonderful. I'm so free. What was interesting is, yes, it was in space. And at that moment in time, my consciousness extended outward. I knew that there was a planet there. I knew I could see everywhere. But then my consciousness turned around and said, that was an interesting experience. I can think two thoughts simultaneous. And I was very curious. I said, that's interesting. Simultaneously, I can think two thoughts and know and understand both. And then all of a sudden, what happens if I can think 4, 6, 10? And my mind started thinking and expanding into all different things that I could see, that I could know. And at that moment in time, it was like my consciousness expanded so it could think a billion things at once, all at the same time. And the consciousness could interpenetrate, become anything it so desired. So it would be like a computer opening up, let's say, 1,000 different windows. And you're the computer, your consciousness, but everything is open and you know all at once. And all you have to do is open one window and you can literally become all that is from the inside out. And when you're inside of that thing, you know it fully, totally. And I believe that that's what Genesis is speaking of. When God was upon the earth, he knows everything. When you can merge and become inside of it, you become it. There's no room for error. So I could feel and know all that I was seeing and wanted to become part of. And in that one moment with my consciousness expanded, seeing and feeling, and all the windows are open, and it was magnificent. There were dimensions within dimensions. There is no emptiness. So it's all dimensions are interpenetrated, and it extended till there was no end. It was eternity. So I was able to feel the vastness of eternity, and everything was growing. It was becoming. There was energy, that it was like the pulse of our God, our creator. And God is such a small word for the expansiveness of the consciousness that fueled all creation. To me, when I was in the heavens like that, it was like a gnat. Like, I want to be disconnected. I don't ever want to come back to earth. Please don't bother me with that. I was too busy seeing everything else, but it wouldn't go away. And it was insistent. So at that one moment in time, I could feel my mother, and I could hear them say this: Stormy, she's dead. Let her go. She's going, no, she's not. And they look, there's no breath, there's no heartbeat. I could hear and know every single word, that's what I think. How do you understand? I knew the language. I knew what they were saying, what they intended, everything. And so at that moment in time, my mother was frantic. I could feel her. And I think this is important for people to understand, that when you do go to the other side, the other people can feel your energy. They know, can feel you, can feel your thoughts, that you can send them love. I could feel she was torn up. She was upset. She was frantic, would be the word. And so then she crumbled, and I could feel her crumble, accepting that I had died, because they had showed her that my heart wasn't beating. She crumbled into a fetal position near that little red, laundry basket full of ice. She crumbled. She went to accept it. And all I can tell you, Jeff, she got angry. You talk about a mother's love. She was angry as she could be, and she screamed my name so that it literally ricocheted into my level of consciousness. Mm-hmm. And she went, Robin, get back here. Mm-hmm. And it reverberated inside of my consciousness, even if I was looking at all the dimensions and feeling them. And that was the moment. It was like a fish hook, and it grabs me. And that's now where I plummet down this tunnel everyone speaks of. And it was lightning fast. And just coming right back, like you have the planet in the back of your image there. Mm-hmm. That's what I would have seen. But then in just a few seconds, you're back into Earth. You're back, you're seeing the landmass, you're seeing the apartment. And then I almost laughed. I'm going to tell you, I saw coming in this little baby body in this red bin of ice. And I said, there's no way it's going to contain my light consciousness. It's not going to be able to contain it. So that was hubris. That was a little bit of the arrogance, right? So when that body is not going to contain that level of consciousness, like a lightning bolt, right? I entered through the top of my head, went into it and came through, and it was just like this. And for 3 seconds, I was going, I can't believe I'm in this body now. I mean, I'm thinking this, going, it actually contained me? Are you joking? And I'm going, well, that's pretty amazing. And it must have been at that moment. This is what's also interesting. I'm still keeping that level of panoramic seeing as well as feeling. I could feel everyone's thoughts and know what they were talking about. So I'm in shock, basically back in my body going, I can't believe this baby body contained that lightning bolt of consciousness, trying to get used to the fact that I'm inside the body and feeling my fingers again. And I can see and feel and know what they're saying right behind me.